They are robbing your parents. They are robbing your grandparents. And in far too many cases, they are doing it while those people are standing right inside a bank branch in broad daylight, surrounded by other customers, sometimes while a teller is watching. And this is not a scare tactic. This is not speculation dressed up as journalism. The American Bankers Association, the FDIC, the FBI, and the Secret Service have all issued formal warnings in 2026, not suggestions, not friendly reminders, formal warnings backed by documented fraud cases, federal investigations, and a growing body of evidence that says seniors in America are being systematically targeted in ways most people have not even begun to understand. And the question that should make every one of you furious is this: why hasn't anyone told you about this plainly? Why has this information been buried in press releases and fine print while people are losing their life savings? That ends today, because what I'm about to walk you through is exactly what those agencies want every senior in America to know, and exactly what the financial industry has failed to communicate with the urgency this moment demands. If you are new here, this channel exists to track exactly this kind of information. New threats, new rules, new protections, documented fraud patterns before they destroy someone you love. Hit that subscribe button right now and turn on notifications, because the information I cover on this channel is not the kind of thing that shows up in your evening news. You will want to be here every time I publish. Let's talk about what is actually happening at ATMs across this country in 2026, because what the American Bankers Association uncovered and formally reported should have been front page news in every major publication in America. Instead, it got buried. It got a press release and a website nobody visits. And meanwhile, people, real people, seniors who worked their entire lives, who saved, who were careful, are walking up to ATMs, completing legitimate withdrawals, and walking away with nothing. Not because they did anything wrong, not because they were careless, but because a criminal had already been there before them and left a device behind. A physical device, hardware, something you can hold in your hand. Here's what this device does, and I want you to understand this completely, because the sophistication of it is what makes it so dangerous. A small piece of hardware, and we are talking about something engineered specifically for this purpose, gets inserted into the cash dispenser slot of an ATM. That's the opening where your bills come out when you make a withdrawal. The device sits inside that slot, invisible from the outside, indistinguishable from the machine itself. To anyone who doesn't know it's there, you walk up to the ATM, you insert your card, you enter your PIN, you authorize a withdrawal of $200, $500, $1,000, whatever you need. The machine processes the transaction completely, your account gets debited immediately, the bills get dispensed by the internal mechanisms of the machine, and then the trap captures them. The bills never make it to your hands. The screen tells you the transaction is complete, no cash appears, you stand there confused, and you assume the machine malfunctioned. Maybe it's out of cash. Maybe there's a technical glitch, and you walk away. The moment you walk away, the criminal who placed that device, who has been watching nearby, waiting, walks up to the machine, removes the trap, takes your cash, and disappears. Documented cases of this scheme were reported in Philadelphia and surrounding areas in 2026. The Secret Service issued a warning. The ABA issued a warning, and yet most of the seniors most vulnerable to this right now have never heard of it. That is a systemic failure of communication, and I refuse to pretend otherwise. So here's what you must do if this ever happens to you, and I want you to memorize this because it matters enormously. If you complete a transaction at an ATM and no cash comes out, you do not leave that machine. You stay exactly where you are. You take out your cell phone and you call your bank's fraud line immediately while you are still standing at that ATM at that specific location. You tell them the transaction showed as complete, your account was debited, and no cash was dispensed. You ask them to flag the transaction immediately. Your physical presence at the machine creates a time-stamped, documented record that dramatically improves your ability to get that money back. The moment you leave, that leverage starts to erode. Say, call. Do not leave until you have spoken directly with a fraud representative. The device only works as a complete theft if you walk away. Don't give them that. Now we move to the second warning, and this one applies every single time you are near an ATM, not just when something goes wrong. Every major bank in America has now formally included this in their official consumer guidance documents, which tells you something about how serious the threat is. The rule is absolute, and it does not have exceptions. Your debit card or credit card never leaves your hands at an ATM. Not to a stranger, not to someone who says the machine is confusing, not to someone who seems friendly, helpful, older themselves, or completely non-threatening. Not to anyone, for any reason, under any circumstances. The reason this rule must be stated in such uncompromising terms is because of what technology can do in the wrong hands in 2026. And I want you to genuinely absorb how little time it takes. A device called a skimmer has existed for years. Most people have heard of it. It reads the magnetic stripe on the back of your card. But what banks are now formally warning about is the 2026 evolution of this technology, something called a shimmer. And a shimmer is categorically more dangerous than its predecessor. A shimmer is small enough to fit inside the card slot of an ATM, which means it can be pre-positioned before you even arrive at the machine, but the version being used in physical handoff schemes is even simpler and more insidious. Someone holds your card for 3 seconds, and in those 3 seconds, a shimmer can read your EMB chip, the chip that was specifically designed to make card fraud harder, the chip the banking industry told you was more secure than the magnetic stripe. 3 seconds of someone else's hands on your card is enough to clone it, enough to capture everything needed to make fraudulent transactions, enough to do damage that can take months to fully reverse, even when the fraud is eventually caught and proven. You would not see it happen, you would not feel it. The card comes back to you, it looks exactly the same, you continue with your transaction, and sometime in the next 24 to 72 hours, charges start appearing on your account that you didn't make. Withdrawals start clearing that you never authorized. And by the time you realize what happened, the damage is already extensive. This is why the rule must be absolute. If you need assistance at an ATM, and there is no shame in that, ATM interfaces are often poorly designed, screens can be hard to read, buttons can be awkward. The correct and only acceptable course of action is to go inside the bank branch and ask a uniformed bank employee at a secured teller window, not the person standing behind you in line, not the individual who approaches you near the machine offering help, not the person who says they work there but isn't in uniform. A uniformed employee at a secured teller station inside the branch. If anyone near an ATM reaches toward your card, pick up your card and walk directly into the branch. You do not explain yourself. You do not engage. You walk away. The third warning is the one people most often dismiss as obvious, and that dismissal is exactly why it keeps working for criminals. Covering your PIN when you enter it. You've heard it before. You know you should do it. And there is a reasonable chance you don't do it consistently, especially when you glance around and don't see anyone nearby. And that is precisely the vulnerability that documented fraud cases in 2026 have been exploiting. The ABA's official consumer guidance states this without ambiguity. Cover the keypad with your other hand every single time you enter your PIN. Every single time. Even if no one appears to be near you. Even if you are completely alone at the machine. Even if it feels unnecessary, even if it feels paranoid, even if you've done it 1,000 times and nothing bad has ever happened, the behavior must be automatic, not situational. Here's why the even if you're alone qualifier is not paranoia. It is documented reality. Fraud cases confirmed in 2026 have involved small mirrors positioned at ATM stations at angles that allowed someone standing at a distance to observe keypad entry. They've involved cameras, disguised as components of the ATM housing itself, embedded in the fascia, hidden in ventilation panels, installed in places that look like they belong there because they were designed to look that way. They've involved recording devices attached to structures near the keypad, a bulletin board, a nearby post, an adjacent fixture that captured PIN entries from customers who were completely alone at the machine and had no way of knowing they were being recorded. A criminal does not have to be standing next to you. They place their equipment earlier, often hours or even days before, and they collect the footage later. Covering your hand over the keypad eliminates this risk entirely. Regardless of how it was set up, it doesn't matter what the recording mechanism is, if your hand is covering the keypad, the recording captures nothing useful. This is the one protective behavior that costs you absolutely nothing and defeats the entire scheme. The same rule applies when you're inside the branch at a teller window. When you enter your PIN during a teller-assisted transaction, bank policy, and in most states, actual consumer protection law, requires the employee to look away while you enter your number. This is not courtesy. It is not a nicety. It is policy, and it is a right. If you are at a teller window and the employee is watching as you enter your PIN, you are completely within your rights to say plainly and without apology, "Please turn away while I enter my PIN." Any legitimate bank will honor that request without hesitation, without offense, without making you feel like you've done something strange. If the employee does not comply, you ask for the branch manager, not as a threat, as the appropriate next step, because your financial security is not a negotiation. We are now at the fourth warning, and this is the one that makes me the angriest. Not because the other schemes aren't serious, they are, but because this one is deliberately engineered to target people's trust in institutions. It weaponizes the instinct to cooperate with authority. It is psychologically sophisticated in a way that makes it devastatingly effective against people who are, by every measure, smart and careful. The FBI has formally identified this as one of the fastest growing financial frauds targeting seniors in America right now in 2026. The Associated Press has reported on it. Banks are training employees specifically to recognize it, and people are still losing everything. Tens of thousands of dollars, sometimes hundreds of thousands, gone permanently and irreversibly. Here is exactly how it works. You receive a phone call or a text message. The caller or the message claims to be from the IRS, the Social Security Administration, Medicare, or a law enforcement agency. They tell you something has gone wrong. Your account has been compromised. There's fraudulent activity in your name. You owe back taxes that must be settled immediately. Your identity has been stolen and your funds are at risk. The delivery is calm. It is professional. These are not panicked, rambling scammers. These are trained, scripted operators who have rehearsed this conversation hundreds of times. They know your name. Sometimes they know details about your finances, information that feels impossible for a stranger to have, which is often what pushes people past the point of skepticism into compliance. They are persistent, and they are patient, and they are relentless. And then they direct you to go to your bank, withdraw a large sum of cash, sometimes $5,000, sometimes $20,000, sometimes more, and deposit it into a Bitcoin ATM or a cryptocurrency kiosk. And they tell you this is the secure method, the government-approved method, the only way to protect your money from the threat. They've described the moment the cash goes into the cryptocurrency machine, it is gone, permanently, not temporarily, not pending investigation, gone as completely as if you had set it on fire. Cryptocurrency transactions are irreversible by design. There is no dispute process. There is no fraud protection bureau you can call. There is no hold that can be placed. There is no mechanism by which those funds can be traced, frozen, or returned. The money simply does not exist in your world anymore. Indiana became the first state to ban cryptocurrency ATMs outright, and they did it in response to this exact scheme. By March of 2026, Tennessee and Minnesota had followed. By May of 2026, 30 states had passed legislation restricting cryptocurrency kiosk operations with specific provisions aimed at this fraud pattern. Think about that. 30 states had to pass laws because the theft was so pervasive, so damaging, and so unstoppable that legislation became the only recourse. Banks across the country are now training tellers to intervene when a senior customer makes an unusually large cash withdrawal. Because in documented case after documented case, the victim was on the phone with the scammer while standing at the teller window. The scammer told them to act normal, to not tell the bank employee what the money was for, to say it was for home repairs or a family matter. And the victim complied, not because they were naive, but because they had been made to believe that telling the bank would somehow compromise their protection. Here is the truth that cuts through all of it. The real IRS has never, in its entire institutional history, instructed anyone to move money into cryptocurrency. The real Social Security Administration has never done it. Real law enforcement, federal, state, local, has never done it and will never do it under any circumstances, including a genuine, verified, documented emergency. That instruction in any form from any caller is always a scam, full stop. No exceptions, not ever. If a bank employee asks you why you're making a large cash withdrawal, answer honestly. They are not judging you. They are not overstepping. They may be the last person standing between you and a loss from which you will never recover. If you are still watching, and I know you are because this matters to you, I want you to take 5 seconds right now and share this with one person in your life who needs to hear it. A parent, a grandparent, a neighbor, a friend. The awareness is the protection, and you sharing this video is the most direct way to protect someone you love. Subscribe to this channel if you haven't already, because this is what we do here. We track the threats that affect real Americans, and we don't soften the edges. The fifth warning is the one that catches people most off guard, and it catches them off guard specifically because it happens in an environment that feels safe. You're not at an ATM on a street corner. You're not on the phone with a stranger. You're inside a bank branch. There are other customers around you. There are employees in uniforms. The environment signals legitimacy and security at every level. And in someone, a person who appears to be a bank employee, who may be wearing what looks like a name badge, who speaks with confidence and familiarity, offers to help you with your phone. Maybe you need to set up the mobile banking app. Maybe there's an issue with your account access. Maybe you're having trouble with a digital service. They ask to see your phone to help you, and you hand it over because why wouldn't you? They're a bank employee. You're inside the bank. What could go wrong? Banks are formally warning customers about exactly this scenario in 2026 because what can go wrong in that moment is catastrophic, and it can happen in under 30 seconds. Your smartphone with an open banking app is not just a convenient tool. It is complete and direct access to every account, every transfer capability, every linked financial instrument associated with that app. So in documented cases from 2026, a phone in someone else's possession for as few as 30 seconds was used to initiate an external fund transfer to add a new trusted device to the account's authentication credentials, meaning the criminal's device now has ongoing access even after your phone is back in your hands, or to install remote access software that gave the criminal persistent, ongoing control of your device and therefore your accounts long after you walked out of that bank believing everything was fine. You wouldn't know it had happened. Your phone looks exactly the same. Your banking app looks exactly the same, and the theft unfolds over hours or days after the fact. The rule that every major bank is now formally communicating is this: bank employees help customers by explaining what steps to take and what information to enter. The customer enters the information. The employee guides verbally. The employee does not physically handle your device. That is the model. And that is the protocol. Any deviation from that model, any insistence that the employee needs to physically hold your phone to help you, is a red flag significant enough to warrant stopping everything and asking for the branch manager, not hesitantly, not apologetically, directly and immediately. I'd like to speak with the branch manager before we continue. Any legitimate bank, any legitimate employee will honor that request immediately and without resistance. If the person pushing to hold your phone shows reluctance to involve a manager, if they minimize your concern, if they seem impatient, if they try to talk you out of it, that reluctance is not a personality quirk. That reluctance is the clearest possible signal that something is deeply, seriously wrong. Trust it. There is one more thing I need to tell you about before we close, and it might be the most practical and underutilized protection available to seniors at American banks right now. It is called a trusted contact designation. And most people have never heard of it, despite the fact that banks are now not only offering it, but in some states are legally required to offer it. I want to be precise about what this is, because what it is not is equally important. A trusted contact is not a power of attorney. It does not give anyone control over your money. It does not give anyone the ability to make transactions, initiate withdrawals, change your account settings, or access your financial information in any meaningful operational way. A trusted contact is simply a name and a phone number, a family member, an adult child, a close friend that sits on file at your bank. And that is the entirety of what they have. What the bank can do with that information is call your trusted contact if their fraud monitoring systems detect activity that suggests you may be experiencing financial exploitation. Let me give you the concrete scenario that illustrates why this matters. You are 72 years old. You have had a checking account at the same bank for 35 years. You have never initiated a wire transfer in your life. One afternoon, your account shows a $15,000 wire transfer in progress. The bank's fraud detection flags it as anomalous. With a trusted contact on file, the bank can call your adult daughter who has no access to your account and cannot do anything to your account and say, "We're seeing unusual activity. Can you reach your family member and confirm this was authorized?" Your daughter calls you. You tell her you know nothing about it. She calls the bank back, and the bank can attempt to reverse that wire transfer before it clears. Without the trusted contact, the bank has no one to call. They flag the transaction internally. They may send you an alert that you may or may not see in time, and the transfer completes. Setting up a trusted contact takes approximately 10 minutes at any bank branch and requires nothing more than the name and contact information of your designated person. Call your bank this week and ask if they offer a trusted contact designation. If they do, set it up. It costs nothing. It takes 10 minutes. It gives your family members zero control over your money, and it might be the phone call that stops a fraud before it becomes a catastrophe you cannot recover from. Let me bring this home, because everything I've covered today connects to a single undeniable reality. Seniors in America are being targeted with precision, with sophistication, and with tools that have evolved faster than most people's awareness of the threat. Cash-trap devices are physically capturing your bills at ATMs right now. In documented cases, card skimmers and shimmers can clone your chip in 3 seconds of physical contact. Hidden cameras and recording devices can capture your PIN when you believe you are completely alone. Cryptocurrency ATM schemes are draining retirement accounts with a speed and finality that no fraud protection system can reverse. And inside bank branches, phone takeovers are giving criminals persistent access to your accounts long after the encounter feels over. These are not hypothetical risks. These are documented, reported, formally warned about realities of 2026, and the people experiencing them are not careless. They are not unintelligent. They are people who trusted systems that criminals have learned to exploit. You now know what those systems look like and exactly how to defeat them. Stay at the ATM if your cash doesn't dispense and call the fraud line immediately. Never let your card leave your hands at a machine under any circumstances. Cover your keypad every single time without exception. Reject any instruction to move money into cryptocurrency, regardless of how official the caller sounds, because no legitimate government agency on this earth will ever give you that instruction. Keep your phone in your hands inside the bank and ask for the branch manager the moment anyone insists they need to hold it, and set up a trusted contact designation at your bank this week. Pass this to someone who needs it, a parent, a grandparent, someone who has a bank account and deserves to keep what's in it. Share it. Leave a comment telling me where you're watching from and whether this information was new to you. And subscribe to this channel, because this is only the beginning of what we need to talk about. The threats are real, the protections exist, and you deserve to know both. I'll see you in the next one.